My co-moderator here is Dr. Sherry Sprangers, will be your hosts this evening. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our head of campus and Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Andrew Egan.
Can you hear me okay without the mic? Okay, great. So I have the easy job, but also the honor of welcoming everyone to this Washington Academy Candidates Forum right here in the Science Building of the University of Maine-Machias. So I'd like to welcome the participants that will be introduced later, I think by Tora, but also you folks here in the audience, and people who are viewing remotely, who are ultimately going to drive the outcome on November 6th. So looking forward to a good interaction with the candidates and the audience. But before I pass this back to Tora, I'd like to thank a couple of people, maybe starting with John Reisman, who has brought events to this campus for a number of years, John. And then also John Lentz, who's helping us electronically to get this out to other folks who couldn't be here tonight. And then a number of people, other people from the University of Maine-Machias, Rebecca Bragg, who's been involved in this, and then also Sherry Sprangers and Tora Johnson, who've done a lot of work to organize this. This just doesn't happen, right? There's been a lot of people who've been involved in the organizational process here over a matter of weeks and months, and so we have a lot of thanks out to those folks who have helped make this possible. Without further ado, I'm going to pass this right back to Tora and wish you a very good evening and an informative forum. So thank you.
So to begin with, let me just introduce Rebecca Bragg, who's on the faculty here at UMM. She's going to be our timekeeper. The candidates will have 60 seconds for their opening statements and for answering each of the questions. And so she's got the green, yellow, and red cards. Hopefully nobody's colorblind. And that will be the 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and please, please stop. She even wrote please on there, and let them know. Questions, we'll begin with 4 questions that Sherry and I will ask the candidates. And then once we've concluded those 4, we'll take questions from the audience via note cards. And Sherry has note cards right here. If you'd like note cards, and we do have pencils as well, raise your hand and we'll bring them on by so you can ask questions. Anything else I forgot before we mention the candidates? Okay. So to begin with, I'd like to introduce our candidates. Beginning from this end, from Senate District 6, we have Marianne Moore. Christina Tarian, who's from House District 138. Rock Alley could not be here, unfortunately. He had to attend an event in Jonesport.
Robert Alley, not Rock
Alley. Sorry, Robert Alley had to attend an event in Jonesport this evening, a very important event. And Kimberly Robinson is here as well. House District 139, incumbent Will Toole. Lisa Hanscom. And then House District 140, Arthur Carter. And incumbent Ann Perry. And last but certainly not least, and certainly not having driven the farthest, I think, is Kathy Jabner and Donald Green. So to begin, we'll start with opening statements, and we'll begin again with Marianne, going in the order in which you were introduced. And you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Do we have to move the mic close to us?
You should be able to speak loudly, so unless you're very quiet.
I'm very loud. So good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Some of you do know me and know a little bit about my background, but I did want to kind of give some of you that do not some background about myself. I am Marianne Moore, and I'm running for the Senate District 6, as was mentioned. I was actually born in Anchorage, Alaska, and I grew up as a military brat. My father's assignments gave me the opportunity to live in Japan for 3 years and numerous cities throughout the United States. I moved to Maine in 2001, retiring with over 31 successful years of service to the telecommunications community. Dallas to Calais is my claim to fame. I taught at the community college for 3 years and was the owner-manager of the Curves Fitness Center in Calais for more than 12 years. I am currently a cancer patient navigator working for Healthy Acadia. I did serve on the Calais City Council for 9 years and was mayor of Calais for 4. So I'm an active community volunteer currently serving on numerous boards throughout down East Maine. And I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Christina Tarian. Okay, well, I think everybody will hear me anyway. I'm Christina Tarian. I am from Maine, Opa, Maine. I currently serve as the Machias town manager. I have been in town manager business for 20 plus years. Before that, I served as an additional 5 years in municipal management. I've served on numerous boards and committees. My educational background is in business administration with the accounting option. I have been involved with community activities as well, serving when I was here the first time as town manager on the Chamber of Commerce Executive Board in the Machias Rotary Club, where I am currently the member, the president of the Rotary Club. I am the proud grandmother of 2 grandsons that live in Massachusetts, and I want to serve Washington County and Eastern Hancock County and try to provide more opportunities.
Kimberly Robinson. Yes. Okay, I'm here because I want to tell you why I make a great representative to my community. I grew up in Harrington. I'm the daughter of a fishing industry family. They from everything from lobster fishing to clamming to worming. They were all avid hunters, and I want to go to protect our gun rights. And wouldn't it be awesome if our teenagers could have a hunting and fishing license until they were 18? Maybe keep them off the streets, keep them from doing drugs. You know, I'm pro-life. I believe in giving a baby up for adoption. I don't believe in abortion. I would like to see the welfare reform continue. I've seen some really good things happening there. I believe in the physician-assisted suicide for the terminally ill. I'd like to see lower taxes, and I just want to do a good job representing my community.
Tool.
Well, good evening, everyone. And first of all, I want to thank the university for having this forum. As a graduate of UMM way back in 2001, I wanted to be here and to be a part of this. I am Will Toole. I've served 2 terms in the House District 139, which is Machias area, plus Lubec and Eastport. I've stood up, fought for local control, fought for local schools, and also, many of you may have heard of the Down East Prison. If you haven't, you probably will before the night's over. Fought hard for that, as have Robert and Ann, and pretty much our whole delegation. And I want to continue the fight to get it reopened, because I don't think it's a lost fight. And I think we need to get that going, and we have a great opportunity for a fresh start, and I think we should take that opportunity and move forward. Thank you.
Lisa Hanscom.
Hello, my name is Lisa Hanscom. I am a resident of the town of Road Bluffs. I actually was born and raised in Washington County. I help co-manage my family farm business. I also raised my daughter there. And I am also the proud grandmother of a 14-month-old little boy. A little bit of background information on me. I actually am a graduate of UMM also. I studied recreation management, and I also studied interdisciplinary fine arts. I have been a select person for the town of Road Bluffs for 18 years, an assessor for a couple. I've been on the Washington County Budget Committee for 16 years, where I have tried to keep the budget under control. I have also been really active in my community through the Gold Coast Highway Committee, a firefighter, and also a Girl Scout leader for the past 15 years. And thanks.
Arthur Carter.
Oh, good evening all. I'm Arthur Carter, Major U.S. Army retired, put 21 years of active duty, 15 years additionally with the government down in Washington as a GS-14 in military intelligence. If all my relatives that are here vote for me, I'm a shoo-in, but you know, we go back to Machias 200 years. My great-great-grandfather was Colonel John Allen, or Battle of the Rim, brought the Native Americans out from Eel Island. So we've been around for a while, and on my father's side, we go back to Eastport in 1786. So there's hundreds of relatives around, cousins. But anyway, why I'm running is the last 2 years, my older brothers, one is now in the Machias Veterans Home, the other one was in Brewer. But anyway, they need places to stay as they got a little bit older, and I got involved in that. I couldn't believe what I had to go through. I also had helped them with medical services, and that was a disaster. I'm sorry, that was a disaster. So I'm just trying to get some things done to help the senior citizens.
Ann Perry.
Thank you. Good evening. I am presently a state legislator. I am finishing my first term. I have been a legislator for 8 years before that, took 6 years off. During that time and during this time, I served on Health and Human Services, also Insurance and Financial Services. I am presently on Substance Abuse Services Commission and a member of the Task Force for Healthcare for All Mainers. I also am on Regional Medical Center at Lubec Board, and am really interested in what is happening economically in Washington County, have worked with Will and the rest of the Washington County delegation to find a way to approach and bring people to treatment for the opioid epidemic that we're dealing with. And again, that's something that didn't happen, but am still working so that we can get a solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is my first candidate forum, so thank you guys. I'm a real newbie in the political world. I am from Chester, which is in Penobscot County, but I represent District 141, which comes way out here, and it has been so much fun. Campaigning and meeting everybody, and hearing. I am addicted to learning, and so I love to learn what your solutions are. And so that's why I'm running, and I am a mom. My seatmate here asked me, so what do you do? I'm a mom, first and foremost. We have 3 children. I'm a wife. My husband and I have been married for 24 years now, and our oldest is 22, and he's out in San Diego. He's going to become a commercial airline pilot, and then our daughter, Sahara, is in New York, pre-med, and then we have a son named Katahdin, who was born in West Africa. We were missionaries there for 12 years and saw some extreme poverty. And so I'm really excited to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I too would like to thank the university here at Machias and John in particular for having these forums. We were at the Governor's Forum, and that was quite informative. My name is Don Green. Yeah, there I am. When I retired, I went back to school. I earned my bachelor's degree and my master's of arts degree in Christian studies at Grand Canyon University. I've been endorsed by the Maine Education Association. I'm a Navy veteran, having served in Vietnam. I am I was exposed to Agent Orange while I was in Vietnam, and so I do have a disability on that. I was a merchant marine captain. I have my own boat here in Machias River and Bay Boat Tours. Oops, time's up.
So next, now we're at the question and answer phase of the proceedings. And once again, Sherry, there are no cards down front. And Sherry has some. If you raise your hand, we can bring them. We do deliver. And does anyone have no cards for us that you'd like to send along? So we're going to begin, and each of the candidates, you have the rotation. So the first question will be question 1, and that's the order that will go in. So, did you find it? So the question will begin with Kimberly Robinson and go from there. So our first question for you, and we have 4 questions that we've prepared, then we'll get to audience questions. And our first prepared question for you is, if elected, what would you do to decrease partisan stalemate and promote civility in Augusta?
Well, I'm not too sure. I'm new to the politics scene, so I'm not too sure exactly what goes on in Augusta yet. But I believe in being civil and hearing people out, you know. So I guess it starts there. You know, everybody needs to take a seat back and listen to each other.
And next is Lisa Hanscom.
Is there, Alex over here? No. I sort of agree with sorry, I forgot your name, first name? Kim. Talking does wonders. I mean, I really don't, I am a Democrat, but I really don't believe in the party lines, because we all have the best interests of our residents at heart. And talking to your other representatives and stuff and working with them to come up with a solution that actually works for the benefit of all of our residents, I think should be at the utmost importance. And I don't think we really need to get stuck on party rhetoric, if I said that right, and worry so much about that, but just what we can do to help the residents of Washington County. And I think Republicans and Democrats can do that. We used to. I don't see why we can't now.
Will Toole?
Well, for the past 4 years, the first thing I learned when I got in the legislature was you do represent everybody. Mm-hmm. And I learned that time and time again. I've broken ranks with my party. I've been called into the governor's office, called every name in the book, and I'm not even joking there. They call every name in the book, but I've worked with folks like Robert and some other folks on both sides of the aisle, on Marine Resources Committee, and in every committee to try to get bills passed. And I gotta say, that counted for a lot when we got the forest rangers, finally got them armed after years and years of trying. Some good folks like Kathy Netto down in Winslow really pushed that and helped on her side of the aisle. And I know Ann did as well. And we got that passed, we got it overridden with the governor with 130 some odd votes. Never would have happened if I just went in and said, well, I'm a Republican, I'm gonna do this, and this, and that's that, and people are gonna have to deal with it. And, with the prison, I have a lot of good friends with the unions. Sorry, thank you.
And Carrie.
Oh, thank you. I know it's doable. When I was in before and chaired Health and Human Services, the one thing that my co-chair and I decided to do is to use our committee as if they were a board of directors and not two parties negotiating ideology. And we did ways to open up conversation. People who talked well with each other, we let them. And it really succeeds, because you may have a good idea, but you don't know the consequences unless you hear the other points of view, because you don't have all the information. We allowed, it took a little longer, the process took a while, but it worked well. And I would say that in that time, we had 178 bills the first session that we were in. We had divided reports, and none of them were voted along party lines. We were working together, doing the work we needed today to do to take care of the issues of everyone in the state and in our district. And that's who we need to represent. Thank you.
Dr. Carter?
There's an old saying that goes, cooperate and graduate. Well, if you cooperate, you can make the end result better. And I have been involved in hundreds of million-dollar programs. And to get that moving, you have to cooperate. You have to listen and understand everybody's views. If you're stuck in a rut, you're not going anyplace. You must listen, you must be able to communicate, and you must be able to take the other side's position for a while and understand it, and then you can cooperate and graduate. This is the theme I think we need, is cooperation and understanding of the other people's views. And that way, you'll at least be able to move forward. As it is now, they aren't moving forward. I look at some of the streaming of the legislature this last time, and it was unbelievable. Both sides were terrible. Thank you.
Next is Donald Green.
Thank you. Everything that's been said is really true. I think right now we are all getting fed up with the rhetoric, finger pointing, name calling, and I think what we really have to do is make up our minds to get past that. We're all human beings. We all have ideas. We need to be listened to, we want to be listened to, and that means that we have to be able to listen as well. And in doing so, we get ideas back to us. That way, like Art said, we become informed by being able to have a discussion, by not being locked into an ideology. We can then be open to working with everyone to find the correct solutions for everyone, because everyone here represents a large district and represents about 8,000 to 9,000 people in each district. So we really need to be able to, as individuals and as representatives, represent and listen to everyone.
Kathy Jackner.
I'm just going to echo, obviously, what everyone else has been saying as well. It's listening is the key. Listening isn't just one-sided, however. When we lived in Senegal and we learned the Wolof language, their word for hearing is dugla, and that doesn't mean just are you listening to me. It means are you understanding me. That's huge in the aspect of communication and listening to someone. Are we truly understanding what that person is saying? And that is, I think we all can agree, is needed in our political world today. So I've had a lot of experience with that. I think that we're all going to work towards that, and we can all agree that the listening and the aspect and understanding, truly understanding what the needs are, that's the key of being civil even. Just be nice.
Well, I think it's very important. We talk about listening, and we certainly need to do that to each other. I think respect plays a strong role in how we address each other, and having respect for people of different opinions and different ideas. But more so than that, I think you asked what we would do to change things in the way that they could be changed. And I think we all want the same common goals. And we look at it sometimes from opposite sides, but I believe that if we start with what we all are trying to accomplish and work backwards to get there. So from my viewpoint, we need to listen, but we also need to start with what we all believe in and then work out the details of how to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Because we all want good schools, we want our children to do well, we want to be able to afford to stay in our home and pay our taxes and have a job. So, thank you.
Going last isn't very good. Everybody else has said all the good stuff. But listening, as they said, it mentioned is quite true. And I've always felt that across party lines is you need to be nonpartisan is what you really need to do. And one of the things I've been very admirable about the delegation from Washington County and the experience I've seen in Augusta, the times that I've been there, they get along tremendously. Regardless of party. They were looking to see what was it that the people of Washington County needed, and that's what they worked towards. And they worked together. It didn't matter what party they were from. And they tried really hard to spread that information and to share that with the House. I know in the Senate, I sat through several of the caucuses. It was great. They would listen to each other. They would agree to disagree. No one was disrespectful. They were very civil. And I think that's what we, as a delegation from Washington County, just need to really spread that word to the rest of the House and the rest of the Senate so that we continue to see the civility that needs to occur in Augusta.
Okay, for our next round of questions here. This one, Will Toole, you'll be the first up, okay? So, as a representative from Washington County, what do you see as the most crucial issues for this region, and how will you go about tackling them in the legislature?
Well, I see there's a lot of issues. We all know the opiate crisis is a big issue, and certainly Joyce Maker had a bill that, had it passed, would have connected resource providers together and helped address that. Broadband, I know Bob McCullum out there in the audience, every time I see him, it's about broadband, and you know, it is about broadband. We definitely need to invest in broadband, and if that means a bond, that means a bond. But the one I want to really hit on is the prison, because it hits such a cross-section of issues, whether it be the economy or the whatever. The prison and getting that reopened is essential. It is essential, and I'm committed. I put a bill in, and I'm committed to pushing that forward next year with a new administration.
Candidate Hanscom, you're up.
I agree with Will. There's actually a lot of issues, the drug epidemic and the prison, and but also the economy in Washington County. Many of us are work with our hands, and we have a problem sometimes bringing enough money to feed our families. Sometimes we're working more than one job. I am a strong believer in broadband, and I don't want to just see it in hubs in like Machias or Calais. I want to see it actually to every resident in our county, because we have a lot of businesses. They're not on Main Street, but we have a lot of businesses that need that broadband, high-speed broadband. We have education that is using broadband, but kids can't do their work at home because they don't have the internet. I really think if we get high-speed broadband, fiber optics, be it 5G or fiber optics in Washington County to every resident, then we will actually improve our economy and a lot of other things. Thank you.
Candidate Carter?
As I was walking around knocking on doors and talking to all my cousins, they all had three top issues, which I agree with what you said so far. But the top issue was medical care. That was the top issue. Having a doctor. And I don't have much time, but I just want to explain something. I have TRICARE for life, I have Medicare, I have choice, and I don't have a doctor. Right? So what good is all that good choice? But anyway, the second issue had to do with long-term care, assisted living, and the assisted living houses, they're going out of business. And the third was the high taxes on real estate. Those were the three issues, and we can address it. And it's impossible to talk about each one, of course, within 30 seconds. But those were the three things that were on top. And I do have solutions, but you know, it's not easy. No solution is easy. Thank you.
Candidate Perry?
Okay. Now, there's a new study that came out, Robert Wood Johnson, that said rural areas, they're above economy, they are now putting the opioid epidemic. That is a problem in Washington County. It has been for years. I worked very closely with Joyce Maker with the bill 812 to really bring forth something that could be a template for rural counties. We need to bring people to treatment. People in jail, addicts in jail come out addicts. We need to treat them. We need to get them back into our economy so that they're earning money and part of our economic well-being. We are paying high costs for incarcerating our opioid addicts, and they are bright people who, with the right treatment, can go forward. And I am going to continue to work on that. Taxes and other stuff are also another really important thing, but I don't have enough time.
Candidate Chapman?
I know that a big concern as well in Washington County here is the farming with the wild blueberries and other industries that are in the farming. I was able to attend their Farm Bureau meeting the other night, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I am so glad that I went to hear from them what their issues are and what they've been dealing with, and the taxations are killing small towns in the rural area as well. You know, we fought the war for independence for what? To have representation, you know, without taxation, right? We didn't want taxation without representation. Now what do we have? Representation with taxation. We have it all, right? We have so much taxation on us. You know, Maine is what? The third highest taxed state in our union. Something needs to happen. The opioid issue is huge. I was hearing this morning on our neighbor in New Hampshire, they started a program where the fire departments, addicts get to go to the fire departments and seek help. And they have been seeing phenomenal results, and I thought that was amazing. I was like, wow, that's really awesome. So there's lots of things that we need to be looking outside of the box to help, because it's huge. That is just a massive issue in all our areas.
Candidate Green?
Thank you. There's a number of issues that have been mentioned: the opioid crisis, health care, elderly care, broadband, education, the economy, Down East Correctional Facility. All of those things kind of tie in together here in Washington County. The Down East Correctional Facility is near to dear to my heart because when I did prison ministry for the state, I came down east and I moved down east here. I started a yoke fellow group at the Down East Correctional Facility. That was still going on, I think, when it was so suddenly disrupted. I will work with Will and anybody else to make sure that that gets funded, gets back and going, because that was part of all of these issues. All of these issues tie through that Down East Correctional Facility. So I will work with that, and that's time up. Chief, that's right.
Back to the center of the table with Candidate Clark.
Yes, there is quite a number of issues that we are faced with here in Washington County, and I know that we can't solve them all at one time, and I think we need to break them up into little pieces. And some of the things that we've talked about and looked at, again, reopening the Down East Correctional Facility, I think is very, very important. If that is not something that is going to be feasible, we were promised a pre-release center here in Washington County. There's $10 million bond sitting out there. You know, the Down East Correctional Facility would be a perfect facility. That's what it was basically doing before it was so abruptly closed. So that's one of the things that I would definitely want to work towards in fixing that. The LD 812, I think it's a very important bill. It is a pilot project where we would actually establish a hotline number where someone who has substance abuse disorder is going to be able to call find out what sources are immediately available. Those right there are two huge things that we can jump right in and begin working on. A little known besides the infrastructure and taking care of our elderly and advocating for our veterans. Thank you.
Canadian?
Yes, when I was speaking to people out knocking at doors, affordable and also accessible health care was one of the major issues that people brought up with me time and time again. The economy, I am very concerned about the workforce of the future and infrastructure, and that means to me both transportation and broadband. If we cannot have workers, dependable workers for our businesses, you know, we've got a problem. And how we get the trades built back up and how we develop partnerships, private and public, to help fund those opportunities and develop that workforce will drive the economy. And infrastructure, if we can't move goods and services in and out of Washington County and Eastern Hancock County so we can compete on the global, the taxes will continue to escalate. So I believe we have to address some of these issues if we're going to ever address the tax issue. Thank you.
Candidate Robinson.
I agree with everybody here. There's a lot of different issues that need to be addressed. And one of my major ones is to lower the taxes. But in order to do that, there's a lot of things, other things that we have to look at. The health care is definitely an issue. We have elderly people out there that are struggling to get by, and they're going without the medications because they can't afford them because they've got to pay so much to take care of their household. There's people in Addison that don't even have reliable electricity. You know, I think the broadband is great. I love that. But there's people in my community that do not have reliable electricity. So, and the opiates are a definite issue. I'd like to see programs where we can get our kids involved in them to try and keep our kids away from following into the footsteps of the others that are already addicted. Thank you.
So before I get to our next question, I want to make an apology. I have to teach a class at 7, so you'll see me slip out. It's not that I dislike anyone or anything like that. I just apologize. Our next question will begin with Ann Perry. And that question, and this will be the last, we have so many questions, we're going to lop off our fourth question and go directly to to audience questions after this. So again, beginning with Ann Perry, do you think that the referendum process is an effective way for the public to participate in state government? If not, what changes would you like to make?
I think it is an effective way. It's certainly an effective way of the citizens really saying, what direction do you want to go in? I think the difficulty with the referendum process is that what gets passed is, and what people know, is the title, but not always what's in it. And I think that does make it difficult. I mean, when the marijuana referendum got passed, it was a 30-page document. I mean, can you tell a book by its cover? Not always. And I know that they get mad at the legislature for holding things up, but we've got to vet the process. It's going to be very important that the legislature take its responsibility and vet the process once something is passed. And I know some of this is a result of frustration with government, and hopefully we can ease that up a little bit and listen to our constituents better so that we have a better relationship.
Next is Dr. Carter.
I'm not fully supportive of the referendum approach as we now have it. It tends to skew things with a small amount of the voters giving the final okay for that particular referendum. If you look at how many turn out to vote versus the total number of voters, you find that maybe 10% are really giving the answer to the referendum and passing it. I don't think that's quite the way we wanted to do it or intended to do it in that manner. So I would like to see a more appropriate method if we were going to approach the voters in a referendum style to present the data not on a ballot only, but you've got to have education on that particular subject. And then you find out what's holding things up. Wow, we don't have money for it now. Nice that you passed it, but you know, we don't, where are we going to get the money? As an example of referendum problems, all the information is not there. So I would like to see a revision of the approach for the referendum so that all the information would be there and supported, as an example, by a long-range plan. When I was in the government, we planned and had plans and knew where we were going. Thank you. I'm sorry.
This is Donald Green.
Well, a referendum is supposed to be when the people speak. And lately, the people have spoken on a number of referendums because we have had an intractable governor who has stymied the work of the legislature and really put the people in a position where they had to force an issue or two or three. Therefore, we have referendums. They don't come complete because they come from the people. In the legislative process, they're vetted, they go through committee, it's worked out, more things are talked about, more information is shared. That's the part that's missing in getting it understood by and processed through the people who brought it forward. They only see what they want as an end result, not necessarily how it's going to affect everyone. So the referendum process is good because it forces issues and forces people to really take a look at them.
I love referendums. I think they're great. Two negatives, however. I've never had a petition brought to me before to actually get a referendum on the ballot. I think that the districts need to have equal representation in getting a referendum on the ballot. No one has ever come to my house and said, oh, will you support ranked choice voting? Sign this. And two, when the way that they are written on the ballot is ridiculous. Our two oldest kids are in college. They are pretty smart young people. Mom, what does this mean? Yeah, I'd like to know as well. Okay? There needs to be some different ways of writing the referendum on there so that people can understand it. I'm sorry. You can't put it in a language that people can't understand it.
Thank you. I had that for a comment. It's been a frustration of mine with the type of work I do for years and years. I think they intentionally write the questions confusing to the voters. I think the voters are pretty smart, and I think a yes should mean a yes and a no should mean a no. I am very supportive of the referendum process because it's the people's right to speak, but I do support providing educational materials so people can be informed. I think informed voters are better voters, and the more information that we provide to them, the better decisions they will make and how to move the state forward. So I think we have some things to work on as far as the process, but I think the process is democracy at work, and so I'm very supportive of it. Thank you.
Some great comments made by all of the ones that have spoken before me. I think the referendum process, the referendums themselves are good because that does give us an opportunity as citizens to weigh in on whether or not we should help our community colleges or whether or not we can help our university systems. So there are some good bond referendums in there, and those are great. It's the citizens' initiatives that are the ones that we're talking about that are so confusing, they're poorly written. Like Christine said, yes is not exactly yes like we thought it was, and it's very, very hard to try to explain that to a lot of the citizens. Besides the fact that those petitions, Kathy, have been passed around in southern Maine and not in our area of the country, so to speak. So I think that's where we need to really take a look at, is the process of the citizens initiative and how we go about doing it and how we get the signatures. Do we even it up among all of the districts and really be sure that everyone in the state of Maine is actually wanting to find out if that is something that needs to be done. Emily Robinson?
Yes. I pretty much agree with everybody here. They all had really good statements on all of it. But I do believe the referendums are good, but there does need to be a lot of clarification on some of the articles that they put forth. Because there is confusion, especially with some of the older people. It's like they're not sure about if their yes is actually a yes or if it's a no. My mother is famous for asking me questions. What does this mean? So yes, I think it needs some looking at.
Lisa Hanscom?
I believe in the referendums. I think it's a great way for our citizens to get involved in government. I also agree with the fact that some of them are 30 pages long. And I think it was about 5 years ago, I mean, I consider myself a pretty informed voter, but until 5 years ago, I didn't realize there was even a little description that you could get about each bond. You actually have to ask for it to be given to you, which I think is ridiculous. That should actually be provided, but after reading that little description of each bond, I was even more confused than when I started. So I definitely think there needs to be some way that these bonds can be explained to our citizens so that they can vote intelligently about each referendum that comes up. And I also agree with Christine about a yes is a yes and a no is a no. It shouldn't be confusing, because I think even a couple of times I voted opposite. Thank you.
Finally, Will Tool.
Well, the joy of going last is you get to come up with things that haven't been said. So I would say this past year, the last 2 years, the legislature has had efforts to reform the process and give equal representation to each congressional district. That's been pretty bipartisan, but it hasn't gotten across the hump, so to speak. It's missed it by 2 or 3 votes. And I think Ann has supported it, and Robert, and again, I mean, rural Mainers realize the value of that. I think the referendums certainly are valuable. You know, Medicaid expansion passed. We have to respect that, and we have to find a way to make it happen, whether we like it or not. And that's hard for people to do sometimes, but we have to make a good faith effort on these referendums, or we're going to see more of them. I do think that we can reform the process, and I certainly think that before a referendum goes out to the public, it should get legal review and financial review in the legislature. Because the kicker of it is with referendum initiatives is that they get none of that. So I'll leave it there since the sign, I guess, is up.
Okay, thank you. So now I have quite a series of questions here from the audience. I've tried to shuffle them a little bit so that things that the candidates have already touched on, I've put those questions towards the back. And I will do my best to read these exactly as written, okay? So the first question, and candidate Jevner, you'll be up first, is what are your thoughts on offshore drilling on the coast of Maine? How will this benefit the fishing industry?
Wow. 60 seconds is very, very short. Offshore drilling. How will it benefit the fishing industry?
That is the question.
You know what? I have to be honest. I do not know much about the offshore drilling at all. And I don't see how it would benefit fishing in the least. So.
That's a fair answer. Candidate Green?
Offshore drilling, it's an interesting question. I don't think it would benefit the fishing industry at all. I think the fishing industry, particularly around here, is struggling with the results of the environmental crisis, water warming up here. We're still working with salmon farms and how they affect the fishing industry. There are a number of things which are really threatening the livelihood of so many of our neighbors here on the coast of Maine. Drilling offshore is a gamble. They don't know that there's oil out there. You're looking at the Gulf of Maine, which is relatively shallow, looking at about an average depth of 300 to 350 feet. So any catastrophe out there, anything going wrong out there, is going to have a very widespread effect. It's not going to be able to sink to the bottom and slide off the shelf. I don't think that that would be good for anyone, let alone fishing.
On to this end of the table.
Having lived quite a few years in Texas, there was a lot of offshore drilling off the coast of the Gulf Coast of Mexico and out of Texas. Those are areas that there was not any fishing. So I cannot see if we were to add offshore drilling in Maine, that would be any benefit to our fishing industry, because we have a huge fishing industry in Maine. That's the livelihood of so many folks. So I do not see that to be a benefit, and I think we would need to use the history and what we've seen out of Texas and the oil spills and the environmental issues that they've had there to learn their lesson and say, no, we do not want offshore drilling.
Canitarian.
I absolutely agree. I see no benefit to fishing, but I do see a significant danger in the proposal. Once you have damaged the environment to that extent, it could be 10, 20, 30 years, hundreds of years before you can ever get back what you've lost. It is such an important industry to this state. And I guess that's my opinion. I would not support it in any way, shape, or form.
Robinson.
It's simple. It would not help the fishing industry at all, and coming from a fishing family, I would fight it tooth and nail.
Will.
I would say it absolutely would be a disaster for the fishing industry. And more to that, people need to realize our fishermen were here first, whether it is offshore oil or offshore wind or some of this other stuff that is being tossed out there. The fishermen were there first. It's their livelihood that's on the line, and we need to protect that first and foremost. Period. End of story.
Karen Hanscom.
Well, my opinion doesn't differ from anybody else's. I don't see how it could benefit our fishermen at all. It is their livelihood. We shouldn't be taking a chance on destroying the environment in such a way that we lose that industry. I mean, not only is it a livelihood, it's actually part of our culture. And the idea of actually putting offshore drilling on the coast of Maine just boggles my mind, actually. I can't believe that it would have even been suggested. So, no, I don't agree with it.
Well, it's definitely one of those areas where you leave well enough alone. We've had it there for a few 7,000 years since the raising of the land and the ocean settled in. And I think that the fishing industry is just too important to worry about introducing drilling in the Gulf of Maine, especially at this time when I just hear that we've got export of energy now. We don't have to worry about it. So I would think that we just leave it alone and let the fishermen do their thing. It would be much better off. Thank you.
Barry, you get to the final word.
I get the final word. Well, I agree with everybody in terms of what it would mean for fishing, and I think we need to understand that fishing is about food. Quite honestly, they are our farmers of the sea, and we can't afford to lose that in this time and age. And so I would definitely not agree or fight any offshore drilling that would affect the fishermen and our sea farmers.
Thank you all. Our next question, and we'll lead off with candidate Terry, and you'll be first. What are the qualities that you believe are necessary to do your job well?
Well, if I was elected, I think the qualities necessary is, first and foremost, the ability to listen, understand what is being said, to, as I said earlier, respect other people's ideas and thoughts, to analyze the data. I don't think we do enough of that. We have our own opinions and we don't look at what is right in front of us because we don't want to see it. And I think sometimes we need to look a little deeper. So I think the ability to work across party lines, and just, as I said, to start with what we all have in common and build from there outward and to find solutions that meet everybody's needs and accomplish our goals. Thank you.
Well said, Christine, very well said. I do think it's very, very important that qualities, for a senator is to listen. I think listening is huge, it's just a huge aspect of it. One of the things that I've also, in my opinion, have found is that there's a lot of learning that we need to do. I know myself, there's so much out there in our county that we do that I don't even have an understanding of. Whether it be the fishing industry, whether it be the blueberry industry, whether it be our education, whether it be what's happening with our towns and cities. So I think that's what's really, really important is that not only are we listening, but as your representatives, we're learning from you. What are the needs of the county? What do we need so that we can be successful in everything that we do?
Candidate Robinson.
Okay, I'm trying to think of a different way to say it.
I know.
Than everybody else has already. But basically, yes, look at the whole picture and try to understand exactly how things could turn out. Try to see into, look into the future and see how your decisions are going to affect everybody, not just one section of people. How is it going to affect the entire society? Try to be respectful to each other and honor, put value to everybody's opinion, and just try to do the best you can to make the wisest decision there is.
Candidate Hanscom?
The question was what qualities, right, as representative?
Yes.
I think the ability to listen, not only to other representatives or senators, but also to your residents. I think the ability to learn, and I'm really big in fact collecting. I really like to learn all the details before I even make a decision on anything. But also I think one big quality is not having a big ego. I'm not there to gain power or to become famous. I'm there to work hard and to represent the people of Washington County and my district to the best of my ability.
Candidate Toole.
I would say there's a lot of qualities that are really important here. I think you do have to listen, you do have to learn. You also have to have relationships with people, not just in the legislature, but one of the good things about being there is you have people like Holly Gartmeyer down at Eastport Healthcare, that if you don't know something about healthcare, you can go to them. Or Marilyn Hughes, or Tom Michaud at Sunrise Opportunities, you can go to them. You can go to the schools and talk with teachers and talk with folks that run the schools. 4 years ago, when I first ran, I never would have thought I'd be endorsed by the MEA, the teachers union. And through 4 years of working on educational issues, I got there this year, and I'm very proud and humbled by that. So I think it's a combination, as Kenny Rogers said, you know, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. You don't count your money while you're sitting at the table, you wait till the dealing's done. You know, you work, that's it.
Candidate Terry.
Yes. Well, I think one quality, and I have learned this, I think of myself as a policymaker, not a politician. And when I'm there, it's really looking at the issue and really having the opportunity to learn from those around me. There are many a time that we're hit with issues I'm really unsure of. And getting in touch with my constituents, or having my constituents get in touch with me about an issue that's really important to them, is important to me. Because in some ways, their responses in their letters have helped me make a decision. I'm here to represent you, and quite honestly, I have to listen to you to be able to do that. Thank you.
Candidate Carter.
Well, I'm sure most of us feel that we don't want more of the same. We need an informative, cooperative attitude when we go into the legislature. If we're going in with a chip on our shoulder, I think we're going to fight the opponents, it won't work. I think you've got to start with informative positions. As an example, with the health care, my first stop was with the CEO of Calais Regional Hospital. We spent an hour and a half discussing. I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but the 35 hospitals in Maine, 14 are under water. How are we going to get them above the line? The other 16 are just about making it. 2 are making some money, and I could go on and on, but just to point out, you've got to have the data before you do some talking. And I hear so many people talking about things that they have no idea of what the real data is or backing up. So I say, be informed, have a cooperative attitude, and you'll get things done. Thank you.
Candidate Green.
Thank you. Qualities of leadership, probably the first quality of leadership, and I think we all know, is servanthood. And that's what government is supposed to do. Government is supposed to serve the people. Serve the people. If I'm elected, that's what I intend to do, to be a servant of the people. Like Ann said, like Will said, you have to listen to your constituents. They're the ones that are going to bring things up. In talking with people, they're the ones who live there. They are the ones who know the problems. And they are the ones who know the solutions. So when you listen to them, you bring that information in, you gather more information from other sources, you reflect on that information, and then you're able to bring that back out in a way that is educational for others and hopefully convincing, so that everyone gets served and not just the party.
Candidate Chapman.
Awesome. Ditto with what everyone is saying, but the one quality that I really want to talk about, for me in particular and personally, problem solving. I've had a ton of experience with problem solving, and I think that we can all agree that when you go to Augusta, you're going to be facing what? Problems. Okay? And that's my goal, is to be a problem solver there for you, for the constituents, for my neighbors, for my friends, for my family, for everyone that is in District 141. I want to be able to solve problems, and that's the key.
Our next question, and we'll lead off with candidate Robinson. You'll be first up. Okay, this one, land trusts have provided many acres for recreation. However, when land is taken from potential landowners to raise families, have small businesses, or farm, enough is enough. What can you do to put a moratorium on land-growing land trusts?
I do not have any experience with this, you know. I do enjoy some of these land trusts. I enjoy going there and it's beautiful, you know. So I did not realize there was a major issue with that. I guess I need to read up and learn a little bit about that. Wish I had been first on this question.
Look at the draw. Candidate Tool.
I would say there are a lot of things. I don't know if a moratorium is the answer, but I certainly think that they should have to pay some property taxes, or it should be, as they were talking about at the Farm Bureau the other night, that it shouldn't be counted against your valuation. I think the conservation property is great. Tourism is really, it helps tourism. It certainly helps the hunting and fishing, and that part of the economy, the recreational hunting and fishing. We are a recreational area, but I do think that we need to find a way to make that both sides of the coin can coexist. Because if we don't, we're going to be consumed to the point where it's only going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I agree with Will. I mean, I can see why we want to preserve land and why we need to have it and keep it from being developed. But living in the town of Ro Bluffs, of course, we deal with this on a personal level because we have a state park and we have land for the inland fishery and wildlife. Now, that land doesn't get taxed, and there's quite a few hundreds of acres actually involved in that. We actually even have some islands that do not get taxed. But it does count on our valuation, which also then affects what we get for subsidies and any money that we might get for help from the state. I do think that needs to be addressed in Augusta, and that we need to come up with some way that it's fair to these towns that actually have this type of property within their boundaries in Washington County. Thank you.
Candidate Carter.
It's quite obvious that the land trust situation is becoming an issue with many of the people along the coast here in Washington County. Certainly, they are taking land out of the tax area, and so that we do not get the full benefit of the tax. However, on the other side, they are providing a service. I know I just read up on what they do allow, you know, hunting and fishing and camping and trapping and so on. But I feel that they are zeroing in on all the oceanfront waters, the prime property, and not really taking the inland property that probably, like the government does, the Moose Pond Reservation or Baxter State Park. So we have to look at that, but it is a contentious problem here in Washington County because it has come up many times.
Candidate Perry?
Yes, there are different types of land trusts, and I think that's the thing to, and there are a number of land trusts, and I had a constituent actually ask me about this, and I had to look it up. But land trusts who actually pay a fee in lieu of taxes. They also can allow farming on that site if you're a farmer who wants to use it. So there are uses other than just hunting. Some of what's happening in terms of the waterfront, there is a program which we put together, I can remember it when I was in before, called the Working Waterfront, where we're actually trying to get some waterfront back for the fishermen and those who are working. And that is a piece of it, because the properties were being brought up by private owners to the point where shipbuilders were, you know, a mile or so away in their shipbuilding and having difficulty getting what they've built into the water. So there are a number of things that we need to look at. What is the trust? What does it do? There are fees. Does it pay a fee? And what are the possible uses that the neighbors have and the ability to do that?
Yeah, the land trust issue is something that I'm gonna learn, I need to learn a lot about it. I went to a sportsman show earlier this summer at the University of Maine, and the land trust booth was one that I went to and got a bunch of information from, and it was very intriguing. And to hear now that in Washington County you guys are dealing with this issue, I am so interested in learning about that and seeing what is gonna need to happen. You know, like Ann was saying, there are different trusts, and I learned that and I read about them. And the utilizations of them, because you know the land that we have here in Maine is what is so valuable. You know, the tourism, just, you know, people come to Maine in order to see, you know, our rocky coasts, our mountains, our, you know, the blueberry fields, the fields, the hiking. I mean, everything that we enjoy on at the ATV trails. You know, I mean, all of it. And so this land trust is going to have to be a lot of research done. And knowing, you know, who's really going to benefit, what's going to really happen with that. I think that there's going to be a lot of data that's going to need to be looked at as well. So I think that's going to be very important.
Candidate Green?
Thank you. I think land trust could sort of be looked at as rural zoning. And when I came up to Maine from Connecticut, I took the job of city planner for the city of Rockland. The city of Rockland at that time was working to try to overcome some zoning issues. And I helped to do that, but one of the things that we're really working on was the waterfront there. I helped to rezone that waterfront so that it was usable to both the people who needed the waterfront. 4.5 square mile harbor, largest harbor in the state of Maine. And you can see the results of that zoning today in Rockland. There's a beautiful waterfront, you know, a lot of things down there. The land trust issue in rural Maine can benefit everyone. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. So we look to the benefits that are, again, for all, not for some.
Thank you.
When I first heard the whole concept of land trust, I was right in there using it. I was, you know, kayaking off of the shores, and it wasn't until I started talking with some of the citizens out of Lubec specifically, where they had some land that was converted to a land trust, and the effect that it did on the taxes for the town of Lubec. It was very crucial, very critical. So it is another area that I have to become more familiar with, because I am not as knowledgeable about it. The other night at the Farm Bureau annual meeting, that was when they talked about how the valuation of the land trust does come into the towns when they're looking for subsidies, and that was something new that I did not know of. I had heard of the working waterfront. So there's a lot of things that I think we all need to put our hands around and really understand what is going on with the land trust and the movement that it is, and use it to the benefit of all of us, not just for the few that have it.
Period.
Yes, I think the issue with the land trust is the same as anything, a moderate, balanced approach to it. There are numerous land trusts, as Ann said, and the way that they're set up and the benefits that they provide. Some do contribute to funding in the towns instead of taxes, or they pay a portion. Others contribute zero to that, and it drives it up. I think there are other issues also that come into play with that, especially oceanfront land, generational land. Part of that is in our Constitution, which is said that all property will be valued at market value. When you have high price sales to out-of-staters, for a lot of money, it drives it up for all the people who are trying to hang on to property that's been in their families for generations. And I think it needs to be looked at as a whole picture, and all of the impacts should be analyzed. Thank you.
Okay, our next question, we'll start with candidate Hanscom. You'll be up first. And what is your stance on medical marijuana, and do you believe it could or will play a part in fighting the opioid crisis?
Of course I get that question. You know, I'll have to say that sometimes my opinion varies daily. Some days I'm okay with it being legal, and other days I'm not. Probably sometimes it depends on whether or not I see a group of kids standing down on the street corner smoking pot.
I will say that the questionnaire was emphatic about it being medical marijuana.
Right. So, medical I have no problems with. And using it, I mean, that I have no problems with. But when I see, then that comes into the question, where are all these people getting the medical cards from? Some of these kids that I know personally who seem to be able to go and get pot, and they're 20 years old, and at least I'm not seeing, I don't know their medical history, but I know them to be very healthy athletes, and so I do have a problem with that sometimes. There needs to be more way to oversee that, I think.
Thank you. Candidate Toole?
I think the medical marijuana is commonly misunderstood. It oftentimes gets confused with recreational, and I think people generally do get confused over it just because of the merging of the two, or not the merging of the two, but the legalization of the two. I do believe that medical has a place. I think it does need to be very well regulated. And I'm not exactly sure we're there yet, but I know that the Health and Human Services Committee did some work on it this year. I think there will probably need to be more work on it because apparently, and I'm told that medical marijuana, it's a different makeup than recreational, and even within the medical marijuana field, there's a different makeup. So I think we need to be very, very surgical in the way we move forward with it, because it could really get out of hand even more so than it is.
Candidate Perry?
Thank you. I was part of a subcommittee that actually spent about 90 hours working with the regulations on medical marijuana. And I understand the question was not just about medical marijuana, but for the use of treatment of opioid. There was a lot of discussion around this, and there were some who have used medical marijuana for treatment of their opioid addiction. We had some concerns, and we did some research on that. What we did in the regulation is say it could be used with the understanding that it's part of a full treatment program, that the recovery counseling group work has to be a part of it. And because quite honestly, if we're going to treat addicts, they each have their own path to recovery. And we want to make sure that they have their choices.
Candidate Carter?
Well, there's no doubt that I support medical marijuana, and that's the key. Well-regulated, well-prescribed, well-monitored a program for medical marijuana. And just to deviate just a little bit into recreational marijuana, if you use marijuana, you've got chromosomes that are called switches. And I hate to think of putting all that chemical variations of marijuana into your body and have those switches turned on, because what they do is multiply. And you know what cells multiply into? Cancer. So I'm just saying there's a detailed study on marijuana's action on the body has not been completed. But I do support marijuana because several people who are using it now have told me it really was a blessing for them. So I support that as a medication like any others.
Candidate Green?
Medical marijuana is all right because it is a drug which is like any other drug that's prescribed for something. Medical marijuana has been refined to the point where they found particular uses for several different compounds within the marijuana plant. for different things, pain control, neurological control, and so forth. So as a prescription medication, it's great. It can be used to treat opioid addiction. It can be used to help cancer patients through their pain. Anyone with chronic pain can be assisted through that. CBD oil, as a particular is used for pain. So medical marijuana, as prescribed, as utilized under that prescription, would be fine.
Yeah, I think that, the regulation of it is the key, as well as, a lot of this research is new. And so we're all gonna have to be looking at it from that perspective and making sure that the, even just where the medical marijuana is coming from, the origin of it, who's producing it, making sure that it's pure enough. There have been just amazing testimonies of patients, children, that have been helped by it tremendously, and so we do not want to say no to that, of course, and we've seen where it has worked. I mean, if it works, that's what we want to do. As in in fighting opioids, perhaps another aspect of it too is that we can reduce the number of prescriptions for opioids. I mean, I had a dental procedure done today, and what's the prescription they write me? Tramadol. I mean, it's an opioid, and I'm like, what, I don't want the opioid. So I mean, if there's another option, that you're going to be able to have for that, I think that is a key. There are way too many scripts being written for opioids, and it's out of control.
Yes, I have always been a supporter of medical marijuana. They have done tremendous things for children with seizures. There is a drug that's approved by the FDA. They are doing wonderful studies as far as Alzheimer's. It's showing promise. It has the ability to break down the coating over the neurons in the brain and reverse Alzheimer's and dementia in elderly people. It has pain management as far as treatment for opioids and addiction. I agree with Ann that it needs to go hand in hand with all of the other elements as part of that. And I throw out there that if you look back in history, medical marijuana was used many, many years ago until they decided to make it illegal and pursued with the opioids and drugs instead. But it was prescribed in our history as a medical treatment in many cases.
Well said, it's probably the pharmaceutical companies that worked on that. I have always supported medical marijuana, and as Christy mentioned, some of the different cases for the children and the seizures and so forth. And I have also seen its benefit for a lot of chronic pain and a lot of my cancer patients. And it has really gotten them through some really, really tough times. Now, whether or not it will help our opiate problem, I'm not sure. I really appreciate what the subcommittees, the hours the subcommittees spent in the legislature working on it. They really did look it over very closely to see what was there. And I like the idea that if it's coupled with counseling and the support groups, because that's the work that needs to be done. And if that is going to help them curb that, then that's great. Let's use that. But let's be careful about who we are prescribing the medical marijuana to, and make sure that we are using it for the correct purposes.
Janet Robinson.
Okay. I've also heard a lot of great stories about medical marijuana and how it has helped so many people. So I believe it's a good possibility that it would be beneficial to the opiate. But I don't have a PhD on my name, so I cannot verify 100%. I believe that up to the people who have that knowledge, but I feel it's definitely worth exploring.
With our next question, Janet Carter, you'll be the lead-off on this one. How would you fund increased investment in our transportation infrastructure, or do you believe we do not need to do so?
Well, the common method is bonds. It's, the state puts out bonds, and each bond hopefully is backed up by gasoline tax or a source of funds that would cover the bond. Now, you know, bonds are expensive, but that's the way we've been doing it for years. And I don't think we want to do tolls. I think that's an alternative, you know, to get tolls and on the roads. But I think that all infrastructure that is properly government sponsored and responsibility should be established and paid for by bonds that are fully identified as where the money will come from. Not just go, like we say now, oh, we're going to buy lottery tickets and they go to education and it goes into the general fund. That's not what should happen. I think we should identify where the money is coming from for each bond.
Candidate Perry?
The transportation has its own budget. So anything coming in from gas goes to the transportation budget. This is separate from the biennial budget that covers everything else. Unfortunately, the gas tax has really not taken care of the needs of maintenance for the roads today. We're having more and more cars on the roads who are using less gas. Yeah, increasing taxes could be one thing. I don't think that would go very well. But I think anything will not go very well. The bonds actually put the state in debt. That's not necessarily the best way to do it if we're doing maintenance. Another suggestion that has come up is a mileage tax, as well as tolls. If I use the roads, and I use it a lot, I'm willing to pay for the mileage that I do, because those roads are important to me, and it's going to help me keep my car in better shape. Oops, sorry. But ideas will look at anything.
Candidate Jenner?
Great. You know what? This is a great question. Whoever did this, thank you. Infrastructure is key. You know, we spent 12 years in rural Senegal, West Africa. I mean, rural. We're rural here, but rural West Africa is real rural. And when we came back from there 4 years ago, and our roads in District 141 were worse than the roads that were over there, I went, whoa, something has to change here. What is going on? If anybody ridden over Route 6 once, it took me 2 hours to get here. I'm sorry, but I do not want to pay a tax on how much I use the roads. I traveled 160 miles to get here today. I'd be paying for everybody's travel here. That's not going to be, I mean, it's a good idea, but I don't think it's going to be feasible, especially for rural Maine. A lot of people commute to work, hours and hours. I mean, I know a friend of mine, she spent 30 years traveling to Bangor, 60 miles, 120 miles every single day. It's going to have to pay for it, you know, it's a budget. Live within your budget. Let's get the roads, though, to the infrastructure that it needs to so that we can get our products where they need to be going.
Candidate
Green. We're dealing with a transportation issue right now, which has been years in the making. It's like a house that has deferred maintenance. We have deferred maintenance on our roads. We're trying to catch up. In talking with people throughout 141, District 141, Route 6 in particular right now is kind of the forgotten route. It used to be the main route from Canada into Bangor. And now it is kind of been let go because Route 9, the airline, has picked up all that traffic and is getting all the money. Route 6 needs to be looked at, needs to be addressed. How do we fund that? With gas tax becoming less, we need to find another way. Mileage is one of them. If you use the roads, you pay for that use, whether you drive 10 miles or 100 miles. We need to find out how to utilize our transportation better. In rural Maine, public transportation is another way to do it, and that hasn't been brought up, but that's another thing that would need funding. So we need to look at transportation in a broad sense for rural Maine.
Candidate Moore.
Yes, we can all agree that our roads are falling apart, and we drive them every day, especially here in Washington County. And I know, like Kathy's talking about, it's a huge area to cover. And we know our transportation tax, or the budget that they have for the transportation, cannot cover it all. I know there's a schedule out there of what roads are going to be actually covered, and when they get a call in Augusta, they look it up, and they very sadly do not want to say, well, your road's not even going to be addressed for until 20 years from now. And so we do need to do something. Right now, I think I do not approve, I'm not for the mileage tax, because I think about so many people having to drive hours to go to Bangor for treatments, or to the doctors, or back and forth to Machias. So I don't think that would hurt our elderly, that would hurt some of our lower income folks. I like the bond issues. I think that they're important, like Art mentioned, that if they are earmarked exactly what they're for, and that they're used for that. I think the problem we ran into this last year is that the bonds were not released, and they were held hostage. And so as a result of that, a lot of the things that needed to be done did not get done.
Candidate Tyrion.
This issue, I guess I feel kind of strongly about it, and first of all, I would like to start with saying failure to plan is planning to fail. I believe the state deferred things for so long and let them go without. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, but if you let our roads and our infrastructure fall apart, we will never attract economic development and other businesses to help lower the taxes on everybody. You have to invest in these things. Some of the ways I can see that you can improve, and I see it every day, and I'm sure there's people here who see it every day. We go out and patch something, and then we go back and patch something, and then we go back again and patch something. And we waste that equipment time, that gas time, the labor rates to do something 4 or 5 times. Let's pick our projects, let's address them well, let's do them 100%, and let's not be going back there every single year, so that we can move on to the other communities and the other needs. Thank you.
Candidate Robinson.
As much as I hate the idea of bonds and more debt, I feel that we absolutely need the road structure. The tax and whatnot on it, it's gonna hurt the lower income people and the agencies that are out transporting some of these elderly people. They won't be able to provide as many services and whatnot. So unfortunately, I see that we have to really think about the bond issue. This patching and repatching, like Ms. Terrian here says, it's not helping. It's just compounding the issue and making it worse. So we might as well just bite the bullet and fix it right, and then, plan better in the future.
Candidate Toole.
I believe that the bonds, one of the reasons the bonds are what they are is generally they're supported across the board. And I think up until this past year, as Mary Ann said, or one of them said earlier, it really didn't turn into a political football, and it was wrong that it did, and it really snarled some things up. I certainly do support the transportation bonds. I think they're the lesser of several options. I don't think raising the gas tax is a great idea. I don't think a mileage tax, because where that's gonna hit, it's gonna hit your school buses, it's gonna hit your public services, it's gonna hit your elderly, it's gonna hit across the board, and it's gonna drive costs up in other areas. So I do support the bonds reluctantly, but I think the DOT does great work. And they're doing the level best they can. They could always do better, but they are putting some, particularly in the Machias area, they are putting some real dollars. If you've been over the Whiting Road in the last few weeks, it looks like a bomb went off, but they're doing what they need to do. So I think the bonds are probably the best solution we have at this time.
Yeah, our transportation and our roads are very important in Washington County. I don't think there's too many of us that don't travel long distances on a daily basis to get around. Probably after hearing everything and some of the stuff we've done, I'm probably for bonds also as a way to upgrade our roads. Now, I agree with Christina on the thing that we don't need to go out and make a patch just to come back next year and make a little bit bigger of a patch, because it doesn't seem to think, we're just prolonging the problem. They need to be fixed, and we need a plan to do that. Now, I am totally against the mileage tax, and the reason I am against that is we had a couple from the Netherlands that stayed with us this summer, and they have a mileage tax. And they have one car. He has to travel for his work. It's extremely expensive to own a car because of the mileage tax. His business actually has to help him pay for that, otherwise they couldn't afford it.
Thank you. And our next question will lead off with candidate Green. What is your philosophy on Medicare expansion?
Please read the last part of it again.
Sorry, what is your philosophy on Medicare expansion?
Philosophy.
I read them as they're written.
Okay. I'm for expanding Medicare to the point where everyone has the availability of medical care.
Medicaid.
I'm sorry, Medicare or Medicaid?
This says Medicare.
Okay, well, I'm working on Medicare then, Art. You're retired, I'm retired, we both got Medicare, right? I think everybody should have the same thing. Everyone should have the availability of medical care just whenever they need it. Does that mean we have to pay a little more to get that? Yes. Every country that has that now, we don't, they pay a little more so that everyone has medical care. But everyone should be able to have medical care, not just the fact that you have money to pay for it. You're living here in the United States. In the United States, you should have medical care. So Medicare for everyone, I certainly agree with it. We have to work that out though, because that's an issue that a lot of people disagree with.
Yeah, the Medicare portion of our medical system here is something that I don't know all that much about it. The aspects though that I've heard from our constituents, from my friends back in District 141 here, is that, you know, for them, for their medical care, it's the cost. It's having worked, you know, their whole lives, and then get to the age, you know, where they are utilizing, you know, having, you know, the Medicare system. There are so many concerns that I hear from people about it. Again, it's just going to be one of those things where, you know, I don't really have a philosophy of it yet, and so just hearing and listening from, you know, the residents, you know, what they believe and what they think, I think is key. So.
Well, I obviously, as I said earlier, that's one of the top things I heard while I was knocking on doors was the access to healthcare and the affordability of healthcare. I am a firm believer that everybody should have access and coverage, and we need to make it affordable for people. I believe that healthy workers are going to be more productive workers, and they're going to build the economy. It's hard to ask somebody who's got a medical issue to get up and go to work every day when they can't get that medical issue addressed. Let's get them feeling well and get them productive. I also think it's a huge, important issue for our rural hospitals who are struggling with charitable care and struggling to stay afloat in our communities. And we need to make sure that the hospitals are here to treat the people who live here. So I am a strong supporter of it.
I have always been supportive of the Medicare expansion, and in our case, we look at it being the Medicaid. You know, I know that's probably a little bit of the confusion. And if we will recall it, our citizens voted for that. They voted that we expand the Medicare to be able to provide the Medicaid to those that, 70,000 Mainers that do not have insurance. Affordable health care is so very, very important. And the citizens have voted. So it is our responsibility as legislatures to find a way to pay for that. We may not have all the answers, but we've got to find a way to pay for it because the citizens have spoke. And our hospitals need it, our rural hospitals are suffering. We've had so many people that are out there that cannot afford health care. And so we need to do the expansion and find a way to pay for it without breaking the budget. I mean, it has to be a very, very fiscal decision, but we do need to find a way to fund it.
Janet Robinson.
Yes, I also feel that affordable health care is a necessity, and how we're gonna go about funding it is another issue, but I think that we need to look at all avenues and try to find something, because there's people out there that really need this health care. So I'm for finding a way to make it work.
Hanscom.
I am also for affordable health care. I've always kind of said it's kind of a sad world where only the rich are capable of being healthy. And I agree, when our workers are healthy, they will work more. That will also boost our economy. But our elderly, I mean, the fact that they have worked and supported us in coming up, and that we cannot, I mean, they're going in debt to actually get medical help. I can't, it just boggles my mind that we even allowed that. But yeah, I am extremely for the Medicaid expansion, and I think we really need to work to fund that and do right by our citizens.
Candidate Toole.
Medicaid expansion is one of those hot button issues. And I firmly believe that the voters heard a lot about it last year. And there was some confusion, but at the same time, people passed it. And what my philosophy has always been that if Washington County supports something, I go to bat for that and I support it. And I did support it this year. And I felt that we do need to make it work. We do need to find a way to make it work. Because people expect us to do that. It would be great if we had a way how. It would be great if they told us how, but we as legislators, that's what we're supposed to do. That's our problem, as Ann said, and I am committed to solving that and working with people on both sides, and I strongly hope that both sides do come to the table and bring ideas forward, because that's really when the best ideas come out, is when both parties bring them up. I don't have the healthcare background others do, but you know, there's enough talented people on both sides of the aisle that do, that we ought to be able to solve this.
Candidate Perry.
Yes, thank you. I'm a family nurse practitioner, so I sit in the middle of this. But I will say that our uninsured are our hidden tax. Because they come into the medical system at the highest cost, the emergency room. And when they are unable to pay, that gets put onto the cost of health care, and then gets put onto the cost of health insurance. So we're paying for this already. But what other thing happens is our uninsured are our working poor. They are the person who has started a new business, who's not earning enough money to pay and afford insurance, but too much money to qualify for the Medicaid program. The expansion is important. We won't see the benefits of it right away, but it is a long-term benefit in terms of getting us economically stable and getting control on the cost of health care. Thank you.
Both my wife and I have been a recipient of health care from many sources. One is Medicare, and I'm a little bit confused on the person that wrote the question, whether it really meant expansion of Medicare or sort of doing away with Medicare and coming up with another solution for medical care to everybody. And I certainly support this. Matter of fact, I wrote a big long letter to the President of the United States on the issue and how it could be squared away. Well, anyway, I want to bring out a few little points of my actual experience with the hospitals. I had a trauma, went in and was put in the hallway to work on trauma, and I said, what's going on here? Well, the whole hospital was backlogged with mental health patients, and they are warehousing mental health patients because they can't send them anyplace. So the problem is so broad and so extensive, it's hard to even address right now in a forum like this. Thank you.
I'm going to squeeze in one more question and for the whole go-around, and then we'll do closing, because I actually have like 7 really good questions left here. And so I just sort of grabbed one, okay? My apologies to those of you whose questions we didn't get to. How would you boost tourism? And we'll begin with you, candidate Moore.
Well, I think it depends too on the area and what is available, but I think to boost tourism, we do need to really beat our chest and really talk about the great things that we do have here in Maine. A lot of people don't know. They are not aware of the mountains, they're not aware of the water, they're not aware of the woods and the hiking and the trailing and so forth. I see a lot of organizations like DART that is really working hard to get the message out. The Maine Tourism Association, they're really working hard to get the word out. And I think we need to continue to do that. And to continue to make our areas where it is a destination, whether it be in Calais, Maine, or whether it be in Machias, to really showcase what we have, the bold coast and the different things that are available. It's just getting the word out and spreading the word and welcoming the tourism to come here. They will tell others and they will come back.
Well, one thing that I've noticed as I've been here and I've looked at is we do not market the area well. What happens is each town seems to market what it has, and it's not a collective, cohesive, organized pamphlet and information for people to follow. When you go other places, they have package deals, they have transportation information. It is not necessarily all in these individual little packets, but put into one nice, how many people have gone places and you open up in a motel and it tells you everything going on in the area and places to eat, places to stay. So I really feel that we have to do a better job of not competing against each other, but competing against other places throughout the world and marketing the assets that we have in this region, because they are too numerous to count, they are beautiful, and they are unique. So thank you.
Robinson.
I would go back to the broadband, because if you've got the broadband and you've got the knowledge to make websites, and you can publicize your area very quickly, you get the word out there very fast. I am very computer savvy and I just love it. I love what you can do with a website. Creating a website is so much fun. And to take some of your local events, what you're doing here, and put them in a website, you can reach so many people and so fast.
Candidate Toole?
I think there are several things, and in a previous life, I used to work for a local economic development group that dealt a lot with tourism, and some of it was bringing people here through DART and other things like Marianne mentioned. But I think the broadband is key, not just for promoting the area, but for when people get here, they want to have quality, high-speed access, whether it be on a cell phone or a computer. But I also think one of the exciting things happening in the Machias area, last year is the reenactors group from the Revolutionary War. That thing has hit, that thing has just blown up and really promoted our history. So this year, if I do make it back, I do plan on submitting a bill to build onto that. A couple of years ago, we did a bill for the Jeremiah O'Brien Bridge downtown here. They now want to do a bill to name the Hannah and Rebecca Weston Trail, plus another bill in the Whiting area as well, so thank you.
This is one of my favorite subjects, actually, being in the sort of the tourist industry with the blueberry farm and the rental cabins, and there is a lot of outreach happening for Washington County through the Gulf Coast Highway promotion and Bike Maine and DART, and truthfully, Washington County, Eastern Maine is totally different than Southern Maine. And we have so much to offer tourists and people from all over the world. And part of that is marketing. Not only us marketing ourselves, but our legislature marketing us, Eastern Maine, Washington County, and even promoting some of our wonderful industries like blueberries and lobsters and our hiking trails and some of that other outdoor activity. We have so much to offer, and we have so far to go, but it's going to be fun.
Candidate Carter.
I was invited to participate in the Heritage Center in Calais. I was on the board and the board of directors, and they had a plan, which most places have, a development plan, and they had done a extensive market analysis and developed their plan. And in the plan, they had so many unrealistic projections that it just couldn't work. They were going to rely on tourism. Tourism is a very special method of handling the population. When I first moved to Calais, I picked up a book, and it said, if you're going to go north of Bar Harbor, don't stop in Calais, that dusty little town. They have nothing. This is in writing, and go over to St. Steve. That's not marketing. Well, anyway, I say marketing is good, but it really needs to be planned very closely.
Candidate Perry.
Yes, there are some good things happening, and I think that we've got to build on that. Eastport has done some good things to build up, bringing in cruise ships. Lubec is really doing a lot to build up with the marathon and other stuff they've been doing. Machias, these are all good things, and I had the opportunity to give to every legislator a book that was made up of all that's happening in Washington County. And I got responses from some of my mates who are in Southern Maine saying, wow, I didn't know that. I think I'm going to come up this summer. So yeah, we are doing good things. And yeah, we've got to sell it. But I think some of that is happening. We've just got to keep doing it.
All right, this is one of my favorites too. So I love Maine so much. We've traveled a lot of different places in the world, and as you can tell by our youngest son's name, Katahdin, this is my favorite place in the world. And so I love to talk about Maine. We have to market, ourselves and what we have to offer. I mean, everybody is just so amazing. I mean, the blueberry fields, the coast, hiking Katahdin, summiting. How many summited the mountain this year? And so, I mean, it's like so many different things that we have here in Maine, and you post your pictures on your Facebook page. I have so many friends that are like, wow, these are amazing. I really want to come to Maine now. Yeah, market it. There are things that are happening. Let's utilize that. The international festival that I went to, that I was able to be, the parade and stuff like that. That was so fun. That was the best parade I've ever been to, and I never even knew about it. So I'm just like, yes, we need to market these things, broadband, all of it. I mean, I love tourism and I love Maine, so let's make it happen.
Candidate Green.
Thank you. Tourism really is based on the local entrepreneurs. And I think that we have to work with local entrepreneurs to build their businesses up, which then is the tourism. That brings the tourism in. We have the Sunrise County Economic Council, which is just moving in here. They taking over the building that the bank bought here in the middle of Machias. I think that the Sunrise Economic Council is a place where we can build locally with the local entrepreneurs to bring this about. It's not just the economy here, but the economy for all of Washington County. And it has to be done on the individual level, building those people up so that they're part of that economy, so that they can promote themselves. As a professional Santa Claus, I have to promote myself. So that's how you deliver the gifts, is by helping other people succeed.
Right, so we are down to our closing comments. So each of you have a whopping 60 seconds to give your closing comments for the evening. And we're going to go in the same order in which we did opening comments. So starting at this end of the table and working our way down. Thank you.
So in closing, again, thank you to the organizers for the opportunity for us to come out tonight, and to the citizens that did come out on this evening to hear our answers and to express your concerns. As I mentioned before, in addition to my 13 years of public service, I also bring to the table more than 30 years of corporate experience, having retired from AT&T Communications in 2000, along with more than 12 years as a small business owner. The time is now for me to step up for the people of Down East Maine and work for common sense priorities. Making fiscally responsible decisions on budgets affecting rural schools and our towns and our cities, strengthening the infrastructure and our roads, making it easier for small businesses to thrive and create jobs, protecting our elderly and advocating for the veterans, ensuring affordable, quality health care for rural Maine, and supporting law enforcement and solutions to the rising drug epidemic. As a community leader who is ready to work for you and be your voice in Augusta, I would be honored to earn your vote on November the 6th. Thank you.
I would also like to thank UMM, the people in attendance this evening, the people who are watching from another location, and also all the candidates that are here and participated. I guess in closing, I feel that I want to represent Washington County, Eastern Hancock County throughout this district, because there is a lot of smart, hardworking, independent people here that are always willing to struggle and to try to make a living and improve this place for future generations. And I think I can bring some fiscal responsibility, some budgeting knowledge, maybe some common sense insights to the state. And I have a deep appreciation and love for this area and the people here. And so I would like to represent you. If you think I'm the best candidate, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank you all, too, for having us here and hearing all of our comments and whatnot. And like I said, I am very new to this, and I don't really know what to expect, but I am really looking forward to going to Augusta and being able to represent the community. So I really hope you will vote for me on November 6th. And meantime, either way, I want to thank the people that have helped me, my fiance Vincent, for being there, being my biggest supporter, and helping me with my financials on my campaign. And also I want to thank Mary Ann for her encouragement, and Dave Burns, they've been big supports to me. And Joyce and Robert for great meetings, it was very supportive. And Ashley and her husband for coming and attending the meeting. You know, she's awesome, and I thank her for stepping up and being a chair for one of the towns that I represent, along with Judy Rolfe in Addison and Sonia Graham from Columbia. You know, and I'm hoping that more people in our towns will step up also. Thank you.
Candidate Tool.
Well, thank you again. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to see such a great crowd. Over the past 4 years, I've learned a lot about the job. Anyone that walks in the first day and thinks they know it all, you don't. You learn every day. I'm proud to be able to share that experience with people, and one of the comments I get from people is, you tell people what's going on. So I believe I'm gonna continue doing that. Should I make it back, I'm gonna continue fighting for the prison. I'm gonna continue fighting for our law enforcement, local schools, communities. I'm gonna keep doing that because I believe we need that in Augusta, and we need to work together to do it. I believe we have the people there. We have some great people on both sides of the aisle that will work together, and I have a proven track record of doing it. So I would appreciate your support come November 6th.
Yeah, I also want to thank everyone. This is my first candidate forum, and if you couldn't tell, I was a little nervous, but I had fun. I actually enjoyed it. So, yeah, I really would like to go to Augusta to represent the people of my district in Washington County. We definitely need to fight for the prison. We need to fight for our education system. We also need to develop our infrastructure with transportation and internet broadband service to all the residents in Washington County so that we can build our economics and bring actually people in also. So I really would like to go to Augusta and work hard for you guys. So please vote for me on November 6th.
I certainly want to thank John for sending out the email, give us plenty of advance warning, getting our schedule, and everybody else who participated in getting it set up tonight. But I do think that I do bring a very unique experience from Washington County and taking it to Augusta. In 25 years I've been back here, I've fireman, EMT, running a food pantry, ecumenical food pantry in Calais, a hospice volunteer. My wife and I were from all the way from Whiting up to Princeton with clients. We're both on the auxiliary at the hospital. I've written grants for many places, 17 grants, and been deeply involved in the historical societies here in Washington County, to include the one here in Machias. So I have a very unique feeling for the needs of the people and the rules and regulations that are driving us crazy. So I would like to go down to Augusta and implement those things that I've learned from Washington County and my extensive experience with the government in Washington. And thank you very much.
And thank you. I must admit that I want to go back because I want to finish some of what we've started. I want to make sure that we continue the work that we started to help bring a template of what would really work for getting people to treatment for opiate abuse. It is an economic necessity. We need to also help our entrepreneurs and people build their businesses. The best way to increase the economy, and this is studies on rural areas, is to build from within. One of the best ways we can do that is expand Medicaid. Let's give them the security they need so they can use their creative ideas and build a business. I want to work for you, I want to work with you, and I hope you will vote for me on November 6th.
Yes, thank you guys so very, very much for the invitation to come out here. Like you know, I drove 2 hours to get here, a little over 2 hours, and I hope that that means something to you, because it means something to me. I don't live that close here, but you are important to me, and I'm committed to representing Washington County. I know that's a big deal with our district, is that we encompass so much. It's the size of Rhode Island, okay? I already need another oil change. I've gone through 6 oil changes through this campaign. My husband's not very happy with me, okay? But so I really, really, really hope that means something to you guys, because like I said, it means a lot to me, and you are valuable to Maine, okay? That's been my campaign slogan throughout this whole crazy journey of running for representative. And so I really hope you guys see that, and that you know that you are valuable to our state. And what is valuable to you is valuable to me. And I want to be able to take that to Augusta and be able to work for you, to be your voice, and to come to just a greater understanding of what our state can do, what you can do for our state.
I do want to thank everyone for coming tonight and for listening to each of us answer the same question over and over and over. I've worked all my life with my hands. I was in construction trades for 20 years. I got involved with a government agency doing housing. When I came up here, I worked with the City of Rockland as City of Planner. After that, I worked with the Washington Hancock Community Agency as Director of Housing Services. I'm responsible, resilient, and resourceful. I've started 3 businesses here in Washington County, 2 of which are still running. I think that in serving you in Augusta is probably the next step for what I want to do as far as service. I agree with Ann that the best investment we can make is in the people that are here in Washington County. And the best way to do that is to listen to what you are telling me. I want to take those words, I want to take those concerns, I want to take those solutions to Augusta and make it work for all of us. Thank you.
And I'd like to express some thanks myself. Thank you for all for coming. I'm sorry we were not able to cover all of your questions. There were great questions here about the prison, about lowering taxes, working with other constituencies and so forth. And so I very much appreciate everyone's attention. I'm deeply appreciative to the candidates for their good humor in sticking to the 60-minute, for each question.
Yeah.
I could 60 seconds.
Go live a ball game.
Well, I've been standing, so it felt like 60 minutes. I didn't even have to get out my hook once. I'm so appreciative. And I also want to thank you all for your sense of public service in actually running for these offices. We need good people to represent us, and I appreciate you for stepping up. So thank you, everyone. Have a safe journey home tonight, and vote on November 6th.